Hello and good evening. I'm Bailo Jallo and you are watching Sheffield Live News, and this is African Voices, a show where we tend to discuss the achievement and also the issues that affect Africans in this country and abroad. And today we'll be discussing Liberia and its new president, George Oponwe Mane, a country that has created history in Africa and a president that has created also history both in the football pitch and now in the political spectrum. But before I start, this is my colleague, Dr. Kululeku Sibanda, who is a political analyst and also a former lecturer at the University of Huddersfield. Hello, Dr. Sibanda.
Hello, thank you.
Okay. And our guest of today as well is two Liberians. And one of them is Prince Taylor, who is the former chairman of the Liberian Union in the United Kingdom. Hello, Mr. Prince.
Hello, good afternoon, thank you.
And next to Mr. Prince is Akwaya Mazayan Bazi, who is a senior pastor at a church in Liberia, a senior pastor, forgive me, at a church in Sheffield, but a Liberian church, if I can put it to be specific. Hello, Mr. Bazi.
Hope of Glory International.
Hope of Glory International.
How are you doing?
Not bad, sir. And both of you are welcome to our show today.
Thank you.
And as I said, we'll be discussing Liberia. But before we start, let me just give you a brief history about the country. It is a country that is located in the west coast of Africa, bordered by three other countries: Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Ivory Coast. It is one of the oldest countries in Africa, where it is debatable. Some people say it was colonized, and some people say it is not colonized. But I'll leave that for the future. But the country regained its independence in July 26, 1847. Since then, the country has been creating history. It is the country that produced one of the first female presidents in Africa, and also the best footballer, many people argue, is still the best in Africa. That is the new president, George Oponwe Mane. And that footballer not only created history in the football pitch as well, but now he is the president of the country, and the first country as well to elect a former footballer to become a president. So today we are discussing his achievement, Liberia's achievement, the past, the present, and the future. So welcome, gentlemen, and Mr. Sibanda, what are you going to start with?
Well, look, of course, Liberia is a country of history. You'll notice that it has the world's oldest person to have walked on Earth, and the second position also goes to Liberia. So a lot of history there. I'm thinking right now whether I'm living in the wrong space on Earth. Should I be emigrating to Liberia instead and give myself a chance to live to up to 150 or 129? I think that's there's a lot to talk about there that goes into Liberia's history. But anyway, here we are, gentlemen. Liberia has had a lot of people are happy with the first female president in Africa, Madam Johnson, and I think that what does that has the idea that Liberia has broken this history. Liberia has moved forward, and of course there's a debate about whether or not Africa has a history of female leadership. But has that changed the view that people have, or your own view that you have about your own society, about your own people? Do you think she was treated fairly as a female president, that sort of thing? And does that become part of the fabric of history? Will you have another female president anytime soon? I think those questions are very important to look at, to establish where society is at.
Well, thanks for those very intriguing questions. I think Liberia is known for history making. Liberia is the doyen of African nations. It is from Africa, from Liberia, where you had the first meeting that formed the Organization of African Unity, now you call AU or ECOWAS. And all of these great institutions actually emanated from Liberia. If you look back to our founding fathers, we've always made history. We've had institutions where people have come in to learn and get great inspiration from. So not only saying that, as you evidently say in your opening sentences, we've been the first country that, in fact, you say it was debatable, but I would say it's the oldest African nation, besides Ethiopia. We've never been, or we were never colonized. That's the only African country that was never colonized. We gained our independence. We have free slaves came and settled back home. There were aborigines, people who settled there and did not go to slavery. But then when the settlers came back home, they formed that nation called Liberia, land of liberty. And that's where we are today. We then made history to make the first female president in Africa. We hope many other African nations will follow our good example. And now again, you have the first footballer becoming president. Well, it's unprecedented. Never have you seen that in the history. So things that are known to be uncommon is what we think we bring to the table for history making.
So, Pastor Bazi, if I can bring you in now, and in terms of the history with Liberia, with what's happening and the current government. So in terms of the election, how the election was done and how the smooth transition of power from one government to another, which, as you and I will know, has not been the case in Liberia or in many parts of Africa, you know, but now that seems to be changing. You are like being as well one of the countries as well that is embracing democracy. How do you feel about that?
Well, thank you very much for inviting us to be here today to talk to you about Liberia, our country. And as you already know, as a contextual theologian, but also international humanitarian worker, I like to be very much central in my analysis in terms of having the religious background, just to make sure that we have a country that is a multi-faith country, and religion has a very important role, and we work together kind of on the interfaith context. In terms of history, we still know, we can forget that Liberia is just recovering from dictatorship as well as civil war. So even though we've come a long way from 2006 to now, 2018, I can now say with kind of a faith that I have, and as a motivational speaker, I encourage you, just making sure that people know that we are leaning towards more on democracy compared to the dictatorship and war. We are not yet there. So I would say that democracy is being accepted, is widely spoken about, but the practical aspect of democracy is yet to be totally implemented. So we can talk about that later. But I'm very much looking forward to the new Liberia today. But as a traditional president and being brought up by my mother, Ellen Johnson's role as the female president in Liberia kind of relate to tradition. As the mother, when there are conflicts and when men are angry and you come in as a peace, a kind of a very calm way of resolving situations. So I kind of look at that, you know, not trying to be very sexy or looking at a feminine way of leadership, but I think she's a learned person. She knows what she was doing, but she had that kind of appeal as a mother for me personally. And I think that kind of laid a solid foundation towards democracy. Whatever the situation is, whatever analysis you will come with, corruption or soft leadership or hard leadership, I still think that it was a great move from a very bad beginning to a kind of middle considerate movement and begin very, very, very positive for Liberia to come up this level to have again. We already heard that about the history of George Weah coming through. And I will relate to George Weah's journey from nowhere to somewhere, I personally and the people we work with. And I think the secret in the whole leadership is about winning the heart of the people. This is nothing to do with education or money. When you can win the heart of people, you can win their trust, then they'll give you everything. So I think if he continues to do his best in giving his heart to people with clear demonstration of love and care, I think that momentum will take us to a pure democracy.
Talking of that though, before go on to what's happening right now in Liberia with the government, I'll just put both of you on the spot. So, having mentioned, George, we are coming from nowhere to somewhere. Which side were you during the election? Because there were these two main parties that were after the first round of the election and came to the second round where he defeated the incumbent vice president. So which side were you? Because we know there has been the argument in Liberia where, or outside Liberia, most people were saying George Weah is not that educated, or he's not having the educational standard to rule a country, being that he's coming, or he was a former footballer, now turned politician. But having that, knowing how to talk to people, like you said, having that charm to convince people to say, look, we need change. Politicians or people who are educated have been ruling us since we got independence, and we've not seen any changes. You guys vote for me, you're going to see a change. So just a quick one. Where were you, both of you? I'll ask you that question.
Yeah, thanks, Balu, for that question. And I think at this point in time, it's not prudent, or it may not be an issue of which side we were. The reality still remains, though, that there are different schools of thoughts when it comes to politics. But what's important is where we go after the political scene. Clearly, many did not support George Weah, and there are different reasons, justification for doing that. And that tells us that we need to go back to the status quo, the system, the establishment. Even in this great country, the United Kingdom, you have people going against the system, going against what's happening, the status quo of what politics is all about. So what I can tell you is that the dynamics is changing, and it's important that all of us learn from what's happening into the changing landscape, into the changing political landscape around the world. Not only Liberia, having George Weah to win elections, to say, well, he wasn't educated. Clearly, people would think, anyone with real mind will say, before you become a president of a country, or before you hold a key position, you must meet certain minimum criteria. So clearly, that would not have been a case to argue with where people were before the election. Look at Donald Trump, for example, in America. He stood on television and said all sorts of things that you would normally not say, which is not normal. But why did he get elected? Because people were against the system. People were tired with the system. People felt they've been failed by the system, the status quo. So this is where we are. Now we have George Weah. There were different theories. His theory is proving right, which is becoming a president who's having got that background, if you talk about administrative background or educational background, to say he can stand and count all of the many degrees he's had. And clearly, it's a learning curve. I think what's important right now is to look back and get those great advisors, people that will be able to analyze situation from different spectrum and give him the advice that is useful for that country going forward. But he's made history, and all of us must be proud of that. In that history-making process, we will all want to, whether people supported George Weah or not, join hands and embrace that government, that country, because the development, no one's going to say it's George Weah Liberia. If you're Liberian, you come from Liberia. What's important is the development and success of that country. If we all stand and say we didn't support this, that president didn't support this, I supported George Weah. In fact, don't bring him aboard because that president, the first thing is we are trying to destroy the fabric of our society. We are trying to bring our country down. Because Liberia is successful, all of us will enjoy that success. And so the issue of where individuals stood, I think at this point is not essential. Where we are with regards to George Weah's policy, where we are talking about what George Weah should do right, and all of us will support that. I think that's key. I've seen some of your articles here where he withdrew a nomination for a key position in government. So those are decisions that should tell you, in fact, that he has an advisor, and probably he's listening to people in the background to tell him, well, yeah, if you took a decision, I think you need to look at it again, put that decision under the microscope to see indeed if it's going to produce some favorable results. Well, there are different decision making.
You raise an important point that I really want to get to at some point during the discussion. But yeah. What's your take?
It is important to know that this is not a mistake that George Weah won the election. We know the previous election, he actually won the first round, and second round he didn't get the number. The people stay supporting George Weah. But the man himself said for himself that my leadership does not come through the eloquent speeches. It is about making sound decision and working with people. So that is one aspect of it. And if you're talking about democracy, we're looking at the weight of the people. So we see the one who is very able to reach out to people, particularly the young people in Liberia who have struggled, like myself, very young when the war took place. So we're looking for someone who is able to walk with us, who is able to listen and show that he's listening. With the nomination of the Chief Justice, and there was a little bit of noise, he's just listening to the people. I don't think he'll be making a lot of mistakes because he knows that he has to listen to the people. But like Prince said, it's not the time to say, well, I favor George Weah or it was about, Bokar. It is time now from the president's own speech to unify the country. And it's politics. I'm not a practiced politician. I'm just kind of person who want to make sure that everyone is moving along. I do understand that we have differences and we always disagree because that's part of our democracy. But in the end, we have to disagree to agree to do something. So in that particular arena, I would say we have voted, we got our president. Whatever the differences we're doing the campaign, we come together now and support our leader. But this is not about the president. It's about us. What do we do individually to get our country up and running so that tomorrow is not always about the government. We can take responsibility. And the government has a part to play in that. Give me some power so that I know that we're working together. And when something goes wrong, we can all take responsibility. And I think that's where we are now. So far, so good. It's great.
Gentlemen, you're all talking very positive, supporting your leaders and getting beyond the divisions and the discussions of the election itself, and all of us, everyone lining behind the new president. That's positive message that I'm getting through. Now, before I ask, what I think is going to be a follow-up question to this. Where do you stand here? If you could make a prediction, where do you stand on whether or not this presidency is going to be, one, transformative, and two, results producing?
Okay.
Where do you stand?
Thank you for that question. If you look at the demographics of Liberia today, most of the people that are now of mature age were people that were born during when you had the war coming from 1989 up to this stage. And if you go back looking at our history from where we've come, with reference to our civil conflict, about 15 years of many of these young people's life being lost, in the middle, not having solid foundation when it comes to education. Our systems, the fabric of our societies, all broken.
Don't justify. Tell me where you stand.
Yeah,
where do you stand? Is he going to be transformative?
Yeah.
Is he going to be successful?
Well,
whatever agenda gives us.
Well, that would be a prediction that one must be careful about. The decision he makes today, the decision he holds onto, will determine whether he becomes transformative, whether he becomes one of the old...
Based on history, your personal opinion.
And what have you. Yeah, well, based on history, I cannot tell you. For example, Ellen Johnson came to power. We have very great ambition and enthusiasm that we will, after 6 or 12 years, have skyscraper all in Liberia.
So I'm reading that you're lukewarm on this one.
Well, yeah, I'm modest. Yeah,
being transformative.
If he listens, he will transform. He will change things. He will make history.
If he listens to who?
If he listens to advisors, and that's just where I'm coming from.
Okay, hold that thought.
Yeah.
Pastor Bazi, come in on this one.
It's going to be transformative. Transformation is already here.
Yeah.
Let's see what transformation is. Life is about the beginning, the now, and the future. And you can almost predict what the future will be looking at what you saw yesterday and what you were in. The arrival of George Weah is already a change. Looking at his own life. But that is not all. That is just what we're seeing now. And before even his presidency, we know how much he invested in the country. Okay? His own personal money.
So you think his agenda is going to be successful?
He's already successful. And I think we can make him more successful.
Pastor Bazi, is he going to be successful with his agenda?
As the president, he's going to be very successful.
Hold it there.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a problem. It looks like it's a very, very good debate that's going on here. But for now, you hold on to your thoughts. Let's go for the break, and we'll be back soon after the break